Oh, I'm sorry, were you guys expecting a clever intro for this episode? Well, I was expecting a decent comic book, so I guess disappointment on both ends, huh? Pissed off? Yeah, you could say that. I hate seeing worthwhile material being turned into pieces of shit. Oh, by the way, Red Hood and the Outlaws issue 16 is a piece of shit. So let's get into that, shall we? For any one of you who's fans of DC Comics and or more specifically Batman comics, you've probably realized by now that Batman's been in a multi-book continuity-driven storyline called Death of the Family. Now, Red Hood and the Outlaws also managed to jump into this, among other books, which were unfortunately left out, mainly being Batwoman and Batwing, which DC still hasn't explained why that is, but okay, sure. So, Red Hood and the Outlaws. Their part in Death of the Family all began with one of the best issues for Red Hood and the Outlaws, which was issue 15. In this issue, we find out that the Joker has kidnapped both Jason Todd and Tim Drake, and is holding them hostage, or, usually what the Joker does. So the Outlaws and the Titans decide that they're going to team up, which surprisingly takes an entire issue to explain this. Okay, sure. Issue 16 is where all that's supposed to finally be concluded, and that'd be great. Except that doesn't happen. It takes off literally right where 15 leaves off, and after the Titans and the Outlaws beat up the Joker gang, it's just a pandering waste of time. In fact, calling it a pandering waste of time would be more of a compliment, because that would mean that there would actually be some good parts in this. And aside from the first page, I can't see any. Oh, and okay, yes, before any of you make this comment, I do note that Deathstroke shows up in this, which feels like a half-assed attempt for DC Comics to set him up as a new villain for the Outlaws. Sure, okay. And at the end, the Joker shows up, which is really weird because it just looks like DC copied and pasted the last page for issue 14 and stuck it into issue 16, which makes no sense. I've seen a 5th grader both write and draw better than this book looks. The artwork is worse than the Green Lantern, and the story is worse than the Amazing Spider-Man movie. In fact, for those of you who don't normally go onto comicvine.com, Comicvine gave this a 1 out of 5 stars, which is a hell of a lot generous than I would have been, because if this was Nerd Culture Radio and I was reviewing this book, I wouldn't even give it a burn it and piss on the ashes, because frankly, it'd be a waste of lighter fluid. Now, I understand that Scott Lobdell is scheduled to leave the series soon, and to a certain extent, I can understand that. But, this story, this series, deserves a hell of a lot better than what it got for issue 16. I mean, if this is his response, if this is DC's response to a giant multi-book crossover event like Death of the Family, I don't think I want to see what issues 17 and 18 are going to look like. I mean, this thing makes Twilight, Hollywood's most hated franchise, look entertaining. That scares me as both a comic book fan and as a movie buff. That scares the crap right out of me. Now, I'd love to be able to tell you that this book's worth it to see Deathstroke or Jason or the Joker or the Titans teaming up with the Outlaws, but if I said that, I'd be lying to you, and, well, I'm not about to do that. In fact, I'd love to see this book bomb and burn as hard as it deserves to, maybe teaching DC Comics and other comic publishing companies that you can't just expect to make money off of a book because it's part of a big ongoing series like Death of the Family, or because it says Red Hood and the Outlaws on it. But unfortunately, I know that's not going to happen, mainly because the majority of you who haven't already bought your books at this point are probably still planning on buying it regardless of what I say, mainly because, as collectors, it is part of a series, and as collectors, for that series, or for that event, we are going to pick it up. This was supposed to be Red Hood and the Outlaws' swan song to Death of the Family, and instead it turned into a steaming pile of shit. I am nothing but disappointed with DC, and disappointed would actually be a good thing at this point. This is worse than Countdown, worse than the Clone Saga, worse than any other piece of garbage that DC has published or that any other comic book company has published up to this point. I am nothing short of disappointed and shocked. In closing, I'd like to say that this almost turned me away from the series, and I'll make this last part short. Now, I've already had to see one of my other favorite superheroes fade away into obscurity because of the New 52 screw-ups. And I really don't want to see that for Jason Todd. Mainly because in the 80s, Jason got it really bad, and in the 90s, it got a little better, but again, really hadn't changed all that much. This is a character that deserves to have his own series. And if any one of you who's listening to this plans on getting into Red Hood and the Outlaws, or plans on trying to get someone else into Red Hood and the Outlaws, don't start with this issue. It is a good series. It really is. But unfortunately, DC really fucked the pooch on this. I wish I could tell you this story was good, but frankly, it's anything but. Hopefully next week, that will change, but as of right now, I can't say for sure. Who knows? Maybe DC can still save this. Maybe Batman issue 17 will be the be-all and end-all for comic books, at least for this series anyways. I'm CJ, and I'll see you guys next time.